So you've heard a lot of really big, deep conversations about tools and how they're used and how economic development work can be accomplished. This one's going to be a little lighter of a presentation, so think of me as the storyteller, maybe the filler for some of the afternoon. But I do think we have a pretty good story to tell. As Jim said, One Southern Indiana is the entity that serves both economic development and Chamber of Commerce services in Clark and Floyd counties. And that in itself makes us unique for two reasons. Number one, we're both a chamber and an economic development entity. Secondly, we operate in two counties as the LEDO, or Local Economic Development Organization, for two different counties. So it's a unique story, and I'll get to the end how we got there. I would like to acknowledge both Jack Kaufman and Monty Snelling here from Clark County, elected officials. Thank you for being here. I've given them every opportunity to correct what I say. They're not allowed to heckle, though, so please hold them to that. If you're not familiar with Clark and Floyd counties, we're the Jeffersonville, New Albany area, or part of the Louisville MSA. So we're on the border right north of the Ohio River with downtown Louisville on the other side of the Ohio River. So there's a little bit of a geography lesson for you, but let's take a look at it on the map. There we are. That makes sense, right? There we are. Now you know exactly where I'm talking. All right, let's drill down maybe a little bit deeper. See us? The little blue star there? We're really excited to be there. Glad that we can identify ourselves that way. We're also part of this entity called Kentuckiana. Now, when I was in Southwest Michigan, we were very familiar with the term Michiana, and I came from Kentuckiana, and they thought that was really funny. I just thought it always sounded a lot better than Indiucky. Okay, told you I was going to be the light-hearted one here. So we're two of the red counties as part of the Louisville MSA. That's who we are. To give you a better map, this is the Louisville MSA. And see the Blue River that runs through? We are those counties directly north of the Ohio River across from Louisville. I show you this picture not because I'm selling us, but to give you an idea of what our region looks like. And if you look at two counties on the Indiana side of this major population center, 1.2 or 3 million people in this MSA, we represent less than 20% of the entire region from a population standpoint. Now, our tagline is we're also 80% of the opportunity, but we have to act in a coordinated function to really maximize that opportunity that we have. So that's who we are. I gave this presentation or one similar to it down home probably 4 weeks ago or so, and I said, this is what we look like, this is who we are as a region, but unfortunately, so many folks down there see this. You can laugh and giggle, but how many of you in your communities see this? Or how many of you go back and you think about, well, we can't work with them. They beat us in the sectional championships in 1958, and we still hold a grudge. It's real. It's very, very real. And our role and challenge is to try to elevate above that conversation. I guarantee that if there's a difference, regardless of the 1958 sectional championship outcome, you're going to have more in common with the folks who played at the rival school than you will have differences between you. And that's a premise that we sort of start with when it comes to regional thinking. So down in our area, one of the big focus areas or focus conversations has been the development of two new Ohio River bridges. And the reason is simple. We're trying to establish connections between our communities and connections between our common denominators, or those common things that we want to see. We are trying to establish relevancy on a global scale, and it starts with regional connectivity. Physical connectivity is a part of that. There are projects all over the state like this. Ours is called the Ohio River Bridges Project. There was a reference earlier to the Ileana Expressway. We know what the folks in Southwest Indiana have been doing trying to get I-69 for years. The Hoosier Heartland Highway Corridor. Some of these may be in your area, and you know it takes a real collaborative effort to move the needle to get some of these major infrastructure projects done. But for us, we needed physical connectivity. We're only 20% of our region. We wanted to access and ensure that there would be continued access to the other 80% of our region. We also see it as a very strong connection point for the state of Indiana as a whole. I-65 is the corridor that runs through. I-64 comes across the southern part of the state. It connects with I-71, which runs from Louisville to Cincinnati up through Ohio. If folks were avoiding this area because of the traffic issues on I-65, they were avoiding us, and they weren't going to contribute to our economy, and we had to do something about that. So there are many business-to-business collaborations that have formed, and I'm a product of one. There are families that live on both sides. We had more in common together and had more reasons to work on this together. There were really three things about this project, or working together as a region, that really came out of this project. The first is scale. We're trying to establish relevancy in terms of scale. And let's be honest, if a company is coming in, we've heard a lot about the workforce challenges, and they're very real in our area as well. If they're coming into an area, they want to know that they're going to have the people available that will help them be productive. And they want to draw that labor shed circle as large as they can. So scale is important. Leverage. If we're 20% of the region, we have a lot more to leverage by bringing the other side onto our page. And we're working through that. And finally, community. There are many advantages that we have in working with a larger community, and I'll get to some of this more detailed stuff between Clark and Floyd County in just a second. If we're going to attract economic growth, we need to improve our product and support collaborations. So the Bridges Project is part of the quality of place piece that makes us not only a better place to live, but a better place for our companies to do business. And as you all know, and this is no different anywhere else in the country, assets are increasingly limited. Folks are fighting over the same assets. We know the folks in Evansville are working on a bridge project. We also know, because we had to work with Kentucky, we also know that the folks in Cincinnati and northern Kentucky are trying to build new bridges. So we're one of three areas that are saying, help us achieve our goals. And we had to put together a plan and a process for that. And many of you know, I worked in rural development issues when I was with the state of Indiana. There is such a rural-urban connection now that if we're not tying those two together and seeing that our circles are a little bit bigger than they used to be, then we're missing out on what our opportunities truly are. Because we all drive to where we want to go, we all shop where we like to shop, and we don't see those geographical borders as being reasons not to do something or to work with others. We are in the process of shaping our policies, our practices, and our cultures. And we have to, as leaders, get out ahead of that and talk through that a little bit more. So as we talk about our story back home, down home, we try to get an idea. This is why the Bridges Project is really important for southern Indiana, for Clark and Floyd counties. Both the new bridges are in Clark County, but it does relieve a lot of the congestion in Floyd County as well. So we changed the question. We flipped the script, if you will. We say, what if there were no bridges? What if there were no connectors? What if there was really no communication between our different communities? What if instead of a bridge, there was a wall, or the Berlin Wall, or even a series of walls between our little communities? How would we operate? How would we take advantage of all those regional assets that we have? I live in Sellersburg. We don't have a zoo in Sellersburg, but I can take my daughter to the Louisville Zoo. We don't have a college in Sellersburg, but I can work with Ivy Tech. Well, I guess Ivy Tech isn't technically in Sellersburg, sorry. We can work with Ivy Tech. We can work with IU Southeast. We can work with the Purdue Extension there. We've got lots of opportunities if we draw our circles bigger, and we are continuing to do that. Here's who we are. So this is just mostly on the Indiana side. You've got Clark and Floyd counties, so you have 2 counties. We have 3 cities. We have 5 towns, and about 190,000 population. Again, just 20% of the entire MSA. When we think about all of the folks that could come together to help us achieve our mission, we got to have a pretty big table to give everybody a seat at the table. And I draw this comparison for one reason. Fort Wayne has 60,000 more people than we do. They're at about 250,000. They're part of one county, and they have one mayor. Leadership there is much more concentrated and defined. We have to find ways to work together. We're not competing with Fort Wayne, but in terms of organizing ourselves, putting together a vision, and implementing tasks towards that vision, we have to act like a community and a collaborative effort. Who's responsible for regional thinking? Well, here's some pictures of some folks that could be responsible in any of our communities. We all are. We have to ask ourselves, what are those regional opportunities that we have? What are those regional threats that we have to get out in front on? And who else do we need to offer a seat at our table to so that we get a different viewpoint or can have a different tool in the toolbox to solve some of these problems? And it's not always the folks that we think of. Sometimes there's different regions. When Corey was in Jefferson County, there's different reasons for Jefferson County or the Madison area to work with us. Hanover College, for instance, is one of our partners. They're outside of our area, technically. But yet we recognize that when we look at who the decision makers are, it's all of us. And in our area, the Kentuckiana area, we have many folks that are at the table for this region. But we have one shared premise. And that premise is this: the best social program in the world is a good paying job. And so we're out working together so that we have folks who are going to hire our residents with good paying jobs. And that takes care of a lot of the other issues. How many of you read this book, The Coming Jobs War? Jim Clifton? Jim Clifton is the president of Gallup Corporation, the company that does all of the pollings. And he has a couple of things that in this book, I didn't agree with everything in it, but there are some things that he hit spot on, I believe. Some folks will need a lot of persuasion to rise above thinking as competitors. And we talk about the term cooperation. We make up words all the time just because it fits our need. This is a good one. Cooperation. How do we work with those folks that we may have traditionally seen as competitors in ways to help us all succeed and all to move the needle? Jim Clifton said this in his book: "The enemy is not in this room." He talks about the fact that the number one motivator for people, and this is a worldwide poll, the number one motivator for people across the globe is a good job. It used to be family, it has been religion, or faith. It's been a lot of different things, but going forward, the number one motivator is a good job. And his concern is, with the growth of China and India, how is the United States going to compete? And he has a lot of different theories in his book, but his idea is we have to start working together and focus on a single premise or a single goal, and that is that the best social program in the world is a good paying job. And we're all going to have to work together to do that. We're programmed, especially when we get down to the local level, we're programmed to see each other as rivals. I went to Jeffersonville High School. New Albany, or Floyd Central, had a kid who played at IU basketball, so Jeffersonville wanted to get a kid to play IU basketball. That's the type of thinking that was prevalent in the 1980s when I was in school. We've got to get above that. We've got to start seeing that these folks are our partners and not our competitors. In our communities, in our MSA region, it's taken 44 years to build the bridges that are under construction now. By the time the bridges were under construction, we needed 2 of them to solve the issue. My question to our leaders is, where are we now, and do we have another 44 years to learn how to work together for the next big project? And most of them would say no. So how do you do regional thinking? It's not for the faint of heart. It takes a true commitment of time, talent, and leadership. With time, talent, and leadership, you tend to build the things that are important, like trust and respect, and to find those commonalities that you have as opposed to focusing on those differences. It takes true investment of dollars and sweat equity. We have to learn, or we are learning, how to be honest about our agendas. Here's what we want out of this. We call it the WIFM. What's in it for me? What's in it for me? WIFM. Ask the question at the table. Get people to give you honest answers. When their agendas aren't hidden and they're upfront about what they want out of it, it helps the entire group get together to figure out what they want to do. We are changing mindsets and opinions, and change is hard. It's hard. Folks don't want to let go. So we're trying to show the other side, the positive side of the future of working together. Financially, there's really no loss of control, but there's true accountability that goes hand in hand with that control. So if we're working on things together, we expect to be held accountable. And as One Southern Indiana, we have put out there what our measurements are going to be and how we expect the community to hold us accountable, because it's how we're going to hold ourselves accountable. The reason for all of this is that when we do get down to the nuts and bolts of economic development, companies don't locate in a zip code. They expect that regional view to meet all of the needs that they have, and that will continue as they move forward. They will expect that those who came together to bring them to a community are going to be the ones that are going to support them once they've made that investment. And so you're creating a partnership and a relationship with them that is going to last, hopefully, for tens of years as their company meets its challenges. They want to know that they are truly in a region who thinks regionally, and they want to be in a region with heart. So how did we go regional in Southern Indiana between Clark and Floyd counties? Well, necessity is the mother of invention, because it wasn't done because it sounded like a good idea. We actually had 2 chambers of commerce, one in each county, Clark and Floyd, and they merged in 1985 because the economic downturn of the early 80s created financial needs for both of these chambers. So truly it was the need to be collaborative to stay afloat. They did try for the first 2 years of the organization to maintain offices in both counties. So that didn't work out. It didn't relieve their financial issues. They actually formed a merged office in 1987. Out of that, in about 1988, the Southern Indiana Economic Development Council came to be. And that was a separate entity with a separate board of directors with a separate mission on growing the economy. So you had the chambers, and then you had the economic development entity. Next came along a visioning process, Southern Indiana Vision 2020, which was a group that came and said, let's just look ahead. Let's start thinking about how this all comes together. From that process, One Southern Indiana was born. Those 3 entities, the chamber, the economic development entity, and the visioning organization, all came together under one, not just an umbrella, in one entity called One Southern Indiana. And it was established in 2006. We weren't the first to share the footprint of Clark and Floyd counties. In 1976, the Clark-Floyd Tourism and Visitors Bureau was created by the state legislature. So Indianapolis decided that Clark and Floyd needed to work together on tourism issues in 1976. In 1991, the Community Foundation of Southern Indiana, which has the same 2 counties in its footprint, came together when the community foundations were being formed. A little further back, 1987, our leadership group, Leadership Southern Indiana, took the 2-county footprint. And in the early 2000s, the YMCA of Southern Indiana expanded and now has presence in both counties. So these are the types of things that have developed to make Clark and Floyd work a little more cohesively. And it's been done more with a carrot than a stick, because we believe that there's some real opportunities. The stick is the threat of the 80% on the Louisville side of the river. We want to be relevant, we want to work together, and we want to find ways to do that. So how do we do it? You have to elevate your thinking. What is your vision? How do you take it further? How do you know if you're winning? If a company announces that it's going to locate on one side of the border Does that mean that the other side loses? No. We're still doing good things for our region. So we're elevating our metrics. How are we measuring success? In terms of job creation, do we look at how many jobs we create in Jeffersonville versus Charlestown versus New Albany? We can't do that. We have to look at how many jobs we create for Clark and Floyd counties. That's a metric number that everybody can participate in and see value in. We also do that in terms of tax-based investment. We share metrics in terms of tax-based investment based on our entire footprint of Clark and Floyd counties. We are creating a industry cluster initiative that is more regional based, and we are looking at advocacy issues that create a positive business environment, those things that can help all of us, and we were very active in the TIF discussion this year as well. So we're trying to create a stronger community, or a stronger region, and by that we create stronger communities. The definition of winning is different. And I'll go back to the idea that whether you're an IU fan or a Purdue fan, winning is important or we wouldn't keep score. So as we look at that, we're trying to find ways that we can all win together. And if you're not into IU or Purdue or basketball or any of the sports, I guarantee you there's another reason that you can be involved, and that is your team. Number 3 is my teammate here. That's my daughter. It looks like she's picking something off her shirt. She probably was. This is why we do what we do. Because if we think about the type of place that we want our children and our grandchildren to grow, thrive, and dedicate themselves to, we got to start thinking about these things now. Because our kids, she's 6, she's not going to like the same things Mama does. She does now. She's not going to in the future. Building it so that it's good enough for us, it's probably not going to be good enough for her. And so we're elevating our thinking and we're having those conversations.